We are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, chapter 10, Battle between the demigods and Virtasura, text 12. Yataksasu mano buddhis Tatvadrichtvasta bandhana Astita paramam yogam Nadeham bubude gatam Yataksasu mano buddhis Tatvadrichtvasta bandhana Astita paramam yogam Nadeham bubude gatam Yataksasu mano buddhis Tatvadrichtvasta bandhana Astita paramam yogam Nadeyam bubude gatam Yataksasu mano buddhis Tatvadrichtvasta bandhana Astita paramam yogam Nadeyam bubude gatam Yataksasu mano buddhis Tatvadrichtvasta bandhana Astita paramam yogam Nadeyam bubude gatam Yataksasu mano buddhis Tatvadrichtvasta bandhana Astita paramam yogam Nadeham bubude gatam Yataksasu mano buddhis Tatvadrichtvasta bandhana Astita paramam yogam Nadeyam bubude gatam Yataksasu mano buddhis Tatvadrichtvasta bandhana Astita paramam yogam Nadeyam bubude gatam. Matajis, please. Yataksasu mano buddhis Tatvadrichtvasta bandhana Astita paramam yogam Nadeyam bubude gatam Yataksasu mano Yata controlled Aksha senses Asu the life air Mana the mind Buddhi intelligence Tatvadrik one who knows the tattvas the material and spiritual energies Tvasta bandhana liberated from bondage Astita being situated in Paramam the supreme Yogam absorption, trance, na, not, deham, the material body, bubude, perceived, gatam, left. Translation and purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Dadichi controlled his senses, life force, mind, and intelligence, and became absorbed in trance. Thus, he cut all his material bonds. He could not perceive how this material body became separated from his self. Please repeat. Dadichi Muni controlled his senses, life force, mind, and intelligence, and became absorbed in trance. Thus he cut all his material bonds. He could not perceive how this material body became separated from his self. Purport. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 8.5, Antakala samameva smaran mukta kalevram yaprayat samadbhavam yatinastatra samsaya. Whoever at the time of death quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Of course, one must practice before one is overcome by death. But the perfect yogi, namely the devotee, dies in trance, thinking of Krishna. He does not feel his material body being separated from his soul. The soul is immediately transferred to the spiritual world. Tyaktvadeyan punarjanmai nati mameti sayana. The soul does not enter the womb of a material mother again, but is transferred back home, back to Godhead. This yoga, Bhakti Yoga, is the highest yoga system, as explained by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita 6.47. Yoginam api sarve samadhyantanantaratmana shadavam bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. Of all yogis, he who always abides in me, with great faith worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga, and is the highest of all. The Bhakti Yoga yogi is always thinks of Krishna, and therefore at the time of death he can very easily transfer himself to Krishna Loka without even perceiving the pains of death. Yataka sumano buddhist tatvadrichtvastabandana ashtita paramam yogam nadayam babute katam. Dadichi Muni controlled his senses, life force, mind, and intelligence, and became absorbed in trance. Thus he cut all his material bonds. He could not perceive how his material body became separated from his self. Om Jnanati Mandasya Jananjana Shanakaya Shakshunmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swamrupkadam Amdadati Svapadantikam Vandhyam Shiyo Shiyuda Padakam Shigum Vaishnavam Sha Shirupam Jagajatam Saganarnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjansaitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam. Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saganalita Shivshakam Vitam Shahe Krishna Karuna Sindhudina Bandhu Jyatpate Gopesha Gopka Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kansna Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshvri Vrishabhana Sutta Devi Pranamama Haripriya Phankha Kalptrubhasha Kripa Sinabhivasha Patram Pavanabhyo Vaishnabhyo Namo Namo Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswata Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sinyavadi Paskachai Tesatane Srila Prabhupada Ke. So we have here Dadichi Muni. Dadichi Muni clearly has no bodily identification, and that it is said he controlled his senses. Vatsha Veham Manasakoda Veham Shiva Veham Manasakoda Veham that Etam Veham Yofisaita Dira Savamapinam Nasisyat Na Savamapimam Pritivim Nasisyam. So this is a description of one who is qualified to be a spiritual master and make disciples all over the world. If one can control these senses, then one can conquer birth, death, old age and disease. But conquering these senses means engaging in devotional service, identifying with our real self, that we may remember how we came here, that was the source of our problem. I was just reading a few days ago in the purports of verses 174 to 177. This is the vision of Srila Vyasadeva when he starts meditating on the absolute truth with devotion on the order of his spiritual master Narada Muni. And in 3 verses he describes his realization that in the purports of one of these verses, Srila Prabhupada writes, the spirit soul has its own way of feeling and thinking in the unconditioned state also. And that's quite an important information, because we have this gross body, we have a subtle body, and we have a spiritual body. Srila Prabhupada says that beyond these gross senses are the spiritual senses. That's our real body, our real self, our spiritual self. In the spiritual world, everyone has a spiritual body, but the spiritual body can only be used for one purpose. What is this purpose? It's devotional service. from the moment you try to use the spiritual body for selfish actions, it's not possible. Then, by that material desire, we create a subtle and a gross body. Srila Prabhupada writes, in the unconditioned state we have our own thinking and feeling. That our own intelligence. But when we try to use the spirit or abuse the spiritual body for selfish actions, then by these material desires, a subtle and a gross body is created. And our thinking, willing, feeling and willing, and our sense of discrimination is taken over by a subtle body, a subtle mind and intelligence, which is different from our real self. Now, the process of devotional service is meant to get back our own original thinking, feeling, and our own original spiritual intelligence. And that's the process of devotional service. How do we get back our spiritual intelligence? Now it's covered. Avritam jnanam etena jnana nityavarnam kamarupena kantyo dushprananalenacha. It is covered by lust, different forms of lust. And these different forms of lust, anger, greed, so on, that makes us identify with the body. So the first stage to come to the level of the Dadichi Muni here is to purify our system from anarthas, unwanted things, which is this lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, and so on. And when our mind and intelligence is purified, when it's purified, then we can identify, we will identify with our real self, and become absorbed in the activities of our real self, which is called here absorption in trance. By engaging in serving Krishna, we are engaging in the spiritual body. We are acting with our real self. But how to purify this mind and this intelligence? Shirada Madan Man Ki. How to purify that? Then we may consider, how did we become contaminated? Dayate visyapum sam sangaste bachayate sanga sanyate kama kamakoda vijayate. We start to meditate on things of this in this world with the intention of enjoying. And then we become attached. And the enjoyment never happens. We become frustrated, angry. But how do we purify the subtle body? Subtle body has three components: mind, intelligence, false ego. We are purifying the mind. Also, it starts with meditation. But meditation on spiritual objects What are the spiritual objects we are meditating on? Krishna's holy name, Krishna's deity form, and a meditation which is certainly not very difficult is prasadam. So that's the way we purify our subtle body. And a very important practice, which is mentioned here in the Bhagavatam, it's in 177 in the Bhagavatam. Just by giving oral reception to the message of the Bhagavatam, that our heart becomes free from LIF, lamentation, illusion, and fear. And that's the purification. Just by hearing the Bhagavatam, we start to understand the futility of this temporary world. We start to understand no need to become anything in this world. We have to realize who we are. That's just by giving oral reception to the Bhagavatam. So by that, our mind becomes purified of lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, envy. All these anarthas go. And our intelligence becomes purified by hearing Bhagavad Gita, by hearing these instructions of the Bhagavatam. So that's how we purify our mind, our intelligence. And it's a re-spiritualization of the mind and intelligence. We come back to our real spiritual body, our spiritual self. When the material mind, the intelligence, is purified, what happens with the false ego? It's gone. Therefore, our process of devotional service has mainly two main stages, with different sub-stages. But like Haridas Thakur said, the first stage is a stage of purification of the heart. And when the heart is pure, then we can chant the Sudha Nam, the pure name. If we chant the Hare Krishna mantra in the conditioned state, where still our heart needs to become purified, then the chanting will purify our heart. But once the heart is pure, then what will be the effect of chanting the holy name? We will develop love of God. But first the heart must be pure. So before we can come to this level of Dadichi Muni, to become absorbed in trance, that we must come to the stage of having the heart purified. That's called in Bhagavad Gita the Brahma Bhuta stage. Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma Nashushtina Kankshati. That is the stage when one is peaceful. Nashushtina Kankshati. No lamentation, no hankering. Spiritual life means being in the present. Just being in the present, where our mind does not allow us. It let us go to the past, lamentation, or we make plans to the future. By that we cannot think always of Krishna when we chant. In Nectar of Instruction, text 8, that the verse Tanama Rupa Saritati Sakirtananu. One should chant his sweet holy names 24 hours a day. In that purport, different stages of the chanting are described. And there you have this, Varana Vasta and then Smarana Dasa. Varana Dasa and Smarana Dasa. Smarana Dasa is where you start to remember Krishna while chanting. That I remember it is 92 or something. I was in the temple in Antwerp in Belgium with my good friend Dayal Nitai. He's disciple of of Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He was one of the first preachers in Taiwan. And we decided one morning we have a japa walk in Antwerp. So we chanted 16 rounds together. And after chanting 60 rounds, he said to me, "Can you believe it? I chanted 16 rounds, but not one mantra I was thinking of Krishna." The mind can be so disturbed but as the heart becomes purified, sometimes we think of Krishna, sometimes not. But if the purification continues, the purification will start according to Haridas Thakur when we come to the stage of Namabhas. Namabhas stage is a stage where we give up apparat offenses. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada stresses these 10 offenses. We should repeat them every day and remember that if we avoid them, we come to Namabhas. And then the period that we can think of Krishna will become longer. And the time that we forget Krishna becomes shorter. And then in the third stage of this Maranadasa, then Gali, we come to the point that it becomes continuously remembering Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport, and then Krishna will reveal gradually its form. Its form, that its qualities, its sweetness, and then we will as our absorption comes deeper, we realize Krishna is not alone. He's in his holy Dham. And there are his associates and his environment. And gradually one comes to the point of samadhi, trance. And Dadichi Muni was completely absorbed in this trance. We must say that the stage of purification, that is something we can endeavor for by our sadhana. If you have a good sadhana, you follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions, the heart will become purified. But then to get this higher absorption, that one must get Krishna's mercy. That's not a mechanistic process. But it's important when we chant that we give attention, conscious. This is the holy name. The holy name is Krishna. Be conscious of that. In the afternoon, I get yoga exercises for my help. And yoga teacher said yoga means to be always conscious, very conscious. He said, concentrate on your breathing. But Krishna consciousness is a much deeper consciousness. That we may concentrate on our breathing, inhale, exhale, that's nice. But Krishna says, Pragati kriyamani guna karmana sarvasa ahankara vimudatma kartamiti manyade. If you think yourself the doer, then whereas everything is done by material nature, Krishna says you are a vimuda, super as. So we can concentrate on the breathing and at time. I'm inhaling, exhaling. But factly that's done by the super soul. A deeper consciousness it's done by the super soul. And I'm just observing the super soul doing that. And an even deeper consciousness is super soul is an expansion of Krishna. It's factually Krishna doing it. So it becomes, Krishna consciousness becomes more and more, our consciousness becomes deeper. Srila Prabhupada used to say sometimes, first be conscious and then Krishna conscious. So it begins with conscious, what's going on. But what's going on? There are gross material laws, there are subtle material laws. There are spiritual laws. And what do we see? Most people even cannot understand the gross material laws. But we are becoming conscious. The law of karma is there, a subtle material law, action, reaction. And we know when I act against Krishna's instructions, it's vikarma, and I get suffering. So we are conscious of that. In Bhagavad Gita it explains one should be conscious of what's liberating and what's binding. And thus consciousness of the subtle level. But then you have consciousness of the spiritual laws. That ye yatamam pabachite tamstate vajamyam. As one surrenders, Krishna says, I reciprocate. And then one comes to the level of seeing everything in this world, good or bad, as Krishna's mercy. And Adichi Muni here, when they were asking for his bones to make this thunderbolt, he was totally detached. He entered a state of trance and he gave up his body. A state of trance means I'm completely identify myself as a servant of Krishna. But that to enter this point in our devotional life, our heart must be pure so that we come to being in the present. Being in the present means you become a master in this Vyavasa Atmika Buddhi, one-pointed intelligence. I'm just preparing a seminar on the 24 spiritual masters of the Uddhav Gita. And this liberated person explains to King Yadu, yes, I became liberated. I learned from 24 spiritual masters. And one of these spiritual masters is the arrow maker. Arrow maker was making an arrow straight. And to make it straight, you need great concentration. And he was so concentrated, he was in his shop, just concentrating, making this arrow straight. And in the meantime, the king came by with all his following. And that means first you have a musical band coming, and then the ministers, and then finally the king comes with so many following. It's a big parade. But he was so concentrated on making this arrow straight, he didn't see anything of it. So like that, a devotee who is absorbed in his service to Krishna, he never thinks of trying to enjoy this world or acting selfish. No, he's so absorbed in the service. He lost awareness. One loses awareness of the external body. That's the Uttamadikar. I was just the other day reading Srila Prabhupada Lilamritam. And then a few months before he passed away, his last visit was the visit to England, Bhaktivedanta Manor. And there he became very sick again. And he was lying in bed practically the whole day. One devotee asked Srila Prabhupada when he was lying in bed, Srila Prabhupada, do you feel pain? Do you suffer? Srila Prabhupada replied, I don't feel anything. Because he was not identifying with the material body. That shows Srila Prabhupada was Jivan Mukta, liberated even within this body. And that liberated stage is completely identifying with our real self. Then the thinking, feeling, willing, and the sense of discrimination is done again by the spiritual body. Therefore, everything Srila Prabhupada did on the spiritual platform was perfect. No doubt of that. And such souls are very, very rare. That completely above body identification. So, I'll stop here. Any questions? Any comments, Maharaj? No? Yes, there. Man.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, we accept my humble obeisances. So, I had this, thank you very much for your explanation. I had this in the word-to-word meaning. It has been said that, in the word-to-word meaning, it has been said that Dadichi Muni also controlled his life air. Yatha Shashu.
Mm-hmm.
So, how does one control his life air?
Mm-hmm. Shirada Madanam. Yes, this is the great yogis. They control the life air. Because the spirit soul is imprisoned in, I think, 7 or 8 kind of airs that, by his own will, the yogi can, that's a process of yoga, of moving the soul to the different chakras up to the Randra here, and then the yogi controls this, that. But that's the mechanistic process of yoga. But for a devotee is completely surrendered to the Supreme Lord. And Lord Krishna, in Bhagavad Gita, he says, Mayadra Ksene Prakati Chushecha Charatram. I am the controller of material nature. So, when we surrender to Krishna in devotion, Krishna takes control. And because, like Dadichi Muni, the Uttam Adhikar, he comes to the stage that he is not aware anymore of his gross body. But somewhere or other, Lord Krishna maintains it. So Lord Krishna takes control. That we see our Guru Maharaj usually then speaks about Ambarish Maharaj, that how Durvasa Muni wanted to control the situation by creating a demon. But Ambarish Maharaj, he was not controlling anything on his own will. He was just engaging all his mind and senses in the service of the Lord. And by that surrender, Krishna takes care of his devotees, Bhakta Vatsala. He takes care. He controls that. But what can we control? It's limited. But Krishna's control is perfect. Therefore, it is said in Bhagavad Gita that at the time of death, a yogi, he must, if he passes away, he must pass away in the first 6 months after Makari Sakranti, when the sun travels into the north. He must leave his body during that period and during the day, that not during the night. There are so many conditions. But at the end of this chapter, that also in the 8th chapter, it's mentioned at the end, that a devotee is not concerned with that. Krishna takes care and brings him back to Godhead. 12th chapter, verses 8 to 12. Krishna is a swift deliverer from his devotee, comes in riding on Garuda and lifts him out of the cycle of birth and death, of the ocean of birth and death, and brings him back. So that's a devotee. His life heirs are controlled by Lord Krishna. And by that, is sure to go back to Godhead. Does that help to understand this? Something else? Yes?
Thank you very much, Maharaj. You nicely explained that for controlling mind and intelligence, we should do good sadhana. My one question is like, Prahlad Maharaj says in one verse this, that Matirna Krishne Parata Swatova Mithobi Padyeta Graha Vitarnam Adanta Kobe Vishatam Tamishram Puna Punas Charvita Charvananam. That those who are determined to enjoy sense gratification, chewing the chewed again and again, they do not understand even by their own and even by others, hearing from others. So then what is the then how they can come to devotional service? How those people like those who are, like as Prahlad Maharaj says, that those people who are determined to enjoy sense gratification, they do not understand either by their own understanding or by hearing from others also. So
Yeah.
what is the hope for them? Like,
Yeah, the first instruction in Upadesamrita is to control the the tongue, speech, to control the urges, the demands of the mind, and to control anger, to control the eating process, control the stomach, the urges of the stomach, and the genitals. So that's the first requirement to begin spiritual life. Follow the four related principles that's going together. And what Prahlad says to his father, Materna Krishna Pato Sotava, Mitopa Bibatit Hina van Vatanam, Anantagovir Fishotam Tamisham Punasmana Sarvata Sarvananam. It says, because his father is a little anxious, maybe I'm going to become influenced by my son and I will become like him. But Prahlad said, don't worry. Your inclination to become Krishna conscious will not take place because you are too attached to sense gratification. A useless business, always doing the same thing, that trying to gratify the senses, it does not work out. Always doing the same thing. Yeah. So that's an important instruction for us. If we remain inclined to sense gratification, the transformation of the heart will not take place. But then how to give this Krishna consciousness to those who are so inclined to sense gratification that yes, therefore we have to be very inventive in our preaching. That because they want sense gratification, like Srila Prabhupada was when he was trying to give a lecture in Amsterdam in the beginning of the 70s, and there were so many hippies, and he started to speak, but they created so much disturbance. And Srila Prabhupada said, just give them prasad. So prasad distribution is very important, that giving the possibility of people to come here to see the deities, to take prasad, and maybe give them a book. They can read one sentence in the book. It can change their lives. Therefore, it's so important for us to preach, because they are all suffering of want of Krishna consciousness. The more you identify with the body, the more you suffer. And it's the greatest act of compassion to trying to give them Krishna consciousness in one way or another. That Narada Muni tricked Dhruva Maharaj. Because Dhruva Maharaj, he had material desires to fulfill, but they tricked him in devotional service, and then he became purified. So we have also learned to trick these materialistic people, and somewhere or another engage them in devotional service. And that's our great mission. That's what pleasing Krishna. A devotee tries to give Krishna consciousness to everyone, and that becomes his life and soul, his mission in life. And that's Srila Prabhupada's mission. Yeah, spread Krishna consciousness in every town and village, give it to everyone, even to Jagai and Madai, as Lord Chaitanya did. Anyway, that's what I could say. Does that clarify? Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you. We will stop here. Chandra Srimad Bhagavatam ke, Srila Prabhupada ke.